Hello, welcome to the Citrus Garden. My name is Christina. This is a reading for Capricorn rising, or if you just have Capricorn anywhere in your chart, doesn't really matter, and you're needing a neutral energy to harmonize masculine and feminine energies within yourself, then this reading is for you. I've already pulled your cards, Capricorn, so let's get started with the bottom of the deck energy. So you're coming in with this horse today, which I absolutely adore. To me, it's just talking about maintaining like a really strong focus. It's kind of like having blinders on, right? Like I feel like you are working towards a goal or something like that. A particularly perhaps like difficult period where you're just needing to put a lot of like focus and hard work into sort of getting through this next part. That's kind of what it's coming through with, but doing it very gracefully is kind of how I'm feeling your energy today, Capricorn. It's actually really lovely. Because I feel like Capricorn, you're so good at sort of like putting in the hard work is kind of what this is talking about. I feel like you're doing sort of a really good job. And even if you don't feel like it, I feel like others are sort of seeing or perceiving you as having a lot of grace within your situation of like almost like doing the work with joy is kind of how it's coming through. And then you have here the water card, which is so lovely, the creation. And it kind of feels like I often see this card as having all of this water draining, which I think is still true for your reading today, where there's like something going to be revealed once the sort of difficult period is over. Because whenever I see sort of an overflow of water, to me that talks about sort of heavy emotions or just like heavy energy. And so once all of that's clear, there's some sort of like structure or knowledge or truth that is going to be revealed here in this situation. And I actually think it might have to do with this King of Wands. So I feel like this is somebody else's energy, actually, Capricorn. So you might not know them yet, is kind of how it's feeling. Or if you do know them, it's like you haven't seen them in a while, perhaps. Or it's like it feels a bit unexpected. It feels a little bit unexpected. However, with sort of like the cards that you have here, I feel like you've already started to sort of see the signs or like move towards this energy, whoever this is. And I will talk about them in sort of the second half of the reading. So Capricorn, let's get started with your energy today, which is really lovely. You have here the crow and the dragonfly. So the dragonfly was why I was sort of saying that you may already be starting to see sort of signs and synchronicities about who this person is, especially because like that's what the dragonfly symbolizes to me, as being sort of like having a very significant spiritual connection that sort of crosses through like dimensions and things like that, meaning that in your physical, even though you haven't met them yet, perhaps, or they're at a distance to you, you still sort of get synchronicities and things like that. That's how I see the dragonfly. And with the crow here, which is really interesting because I feel like these are a little bit unrelated, even though they're both air signs. They could be, but it's more so for me talking about with the crow as like having information that others in the room don't have, right? It's like kind of like you have a knowing or secret. It could be, it doesn't quite feel like a secret, but it's like that, right? It's like there's something that you know about a certain situation that perhaps others don't know. It could be just like your connection to source, right? Like you could have a really strong connection to like source or your guides. Where it's like when you're in like your workplace, for example, if like you're surrounded by people who are not spiritual, right? It kind of gives you this like edge is kind of how it's feeling today, Capricorn. Because your energy today is very sort of like, it is sort of this King of Wands, but you're coming in more with this sort of the Queen of Wands because you have that card out too. So I feel like there's a lot of like confidence within you as well because you have the oyster and the fox. So how I was seeing this is like, it kind of feels like Capricorn that like you're like the cleverest person in the room or something like that. There's just sort of this energy here of like confidence and like people are drawn to you for whatever reason. Just because you're awesome, perhaps. I don't know. With the fox today, I was feeling this is kind of like whatever sort of challenging period that you're in, Capricorn, it's kind of like you're the one who like raises everyone's spirits perhaps in the room, like something like that, like very clever, very funny, that kind of thing, and makes people feel better. Like how I was seeing this fox card is kind of like today the sun came out, absolutely gorgeous. It's been gray for like a week, I want to say. Like I can't even remember the last time I saw the sun, and that's kind of like what this fox energy is for you today, Capricorn. It's like you're like the sun to the ones in your environment somehow. But what I love about the oyster, because it always talks about something about to be revealed, but more specifically, it feels like the process towards this reveal has been very painstaking, right? Because the pearls are created through sort of irritation, right? Difficulty, all of that sort of heavy energy, right? So it's kind of like, I feel like Capricorn, you're almost like, if you're not like the leader of the pack, because there's not that, it doesn't feel like you're leading. It's kind of just like you're in a group. You're all sort of working together on something. You have a specific focus to sort of get through this part together, perhaps. But it's like you're the one who brings the sunshine, right? Which is really gorgeous, Capricorn. Because we have here for the tarot, like the World and the Queen of Materials, which is absolutely your energy, right? It's like having, because it feels like the energy in your environment not that it's difficult. Well, it is a little bit difficult because you have like the blinders on, right? Having a specific focus, not allowing yourself to be sort of distracted by the things around you. But you're coming in with such like grace and confidence and stability. It's like people, like, again, it feels kind of like you're like the smartest one in the room, or like the most clever, or the most sort of like peaceful in a sense. Like people, like if you're in sort of a stressful work environment, like everyone's going to come to you just to sort of get that like peace or like a reprieve from stress. Perhaps you just like crack a joke or something like that. This World card to me always feels like a really good storyteller, right? Someone who just has a lot of wisdom to share. But because it's coming out with the Queen of Pentacles, it's all of that sort of like nurturing, taking care of people, being sort of like the mom in the group is kind of how this is feeling. But then, and again, this oyster could just be sort of like a deadline is kind of how it's feeling. Like, you know that this oyster will open at some point. There will be sort of that reward after like a difficult or stressful time period. Because then you also have here the Tower in reverse. It specifically came out in reverse, which meaning it's kind of like it could just be in preparation for the holidays, right? It's like you're done, you have like time off from work or school or whatever it is, and just being sort of free to do what you want to do. That's what this energy is. And then you have here the Queen of Wands, which is interesting because, again, we had the King of Wands, which we will get back to, but it's kind of like, I feel like because you have both the Queen of Materials and the Queen of Wands, how I was seeing this is kind of like the transition sort of after this period of difficulty, right, where there's like kind of like stress or whatever it is, almost like it's like you're the first one to crack out a bottle or something like that, right? Like it's like turning from like sort of like this nurturing mother figure perhaps, or like older sister or whatever it is, into someone who's much more like fun and playful, especially the fox, right? It's like I feel like you can do both, Capricorn. It's like you're in this role right now, the Queen of Materials, or Pentacles I should say, just completely nurturing, giving, like just like soothing other people's worries, perhaps like giving a lot of advice as well, right? Like just helping people to sort of get through this next phase. And then as soon as that oyster opens, you turn into like this playful fox, right? Like very, very confident, like very fun, very just like upbeat and charming is kind of how it's coming through which is absolutely lovely for you, Capricorn. And then we have here the Ace of Pentacles and the Fool card, which is so lovely because this is the pearl, right? This is the pearl, the actual thing. It may not be an actual like sort of physical thing, because I asked like I asked the question, what is the pearl that Capricorn's getting out of this? And you have here the Six of Wands, which is just sort of talking about like an energy of success, right? Success, freedom. Like it comes after the Five of Wands, which is sort of like conflict or stress, right? A period of stress. So coming out of that. So I feel like it could just be like leading up into the holidays. There could be just like a lot of stress in that sort of like last week before that. You could just be like going Christmas shopping, getting all your Christmas shopping done, something like that. But doing it with such an attitude of like joy and happiness that others are also drawn to you as well, is kind of how that's feeling to me with this Fool card. It's so lovely. I really love this deck, and I don't use it that much, but I don't know, it just feels very sort of like creative, but also kind of whimsical and bright is basically how this is feeling today, Capricorn. Okay, so that's your current energy. I'm going to move into what's something that you need to know, or what's something that you can focus on. And what's interesting here is that I do feel that there's another person coming into your experience, is kind of how it's feeling. Because what's interesting about their animal card today is that they have here the butterfly and the owl. And so there was this sort of like mirroring effect here, right? Where it's like you have the crow and the dragonfly, they have the butterfly and the owl. So they're mirrored in this respect. So again, they too have a lot of wisdom. The thing about the difference between the crow and the owl, I want to say, is that the crow is a little bit more mischievous. As I was saying at the beginning, it feels kind of like you have like a secret or a knowing that nobody else in the room knows about, kind of thing. Or it's like you're like the most clever person in the room or something like that. Whereas the owl's a bit more like watchful, an observer of some sort. They could be sort of more on the outside, like, because it feels like for you, Capricorn, you're kind of like the center of attention, or like you're the pivot point of the room in a sense, whereas this person may be more sort of an outsider, or if not like an outsider, just like prefers sort of to stay around the edges, is kind of how this is feeling. But they also have this interesting dynamic where you have the snake and the elk, which is kind of again mirroring you, right? With this, the oyster, something that's sort of like, because these two cards were looking very similar to me today. And then an earth sign, right? So there's a lot of sort of mirroring going on here. But it's kind of like almost like you're opposite, because where you're sort of being in the center of the room or the center of attention, they're sort of on the outside, is kind of how it's feeling, right? With the surrounding energy, which is so interesting. I'm not sure exactly what that signifies, but we will get into it a little bit more. I feel like with the elk, because this always talks to me about like being called or being drawn towards an energy that you're not quite sure about. I feel like that's sort of what their energy is towards you. It's like they're feeling drawn towards you, especially if you're like the center of attention, or even if it's not like something that you necessarily seek out, right? Like you're not necessarily trying to be the center of attention or like whatever, the focus of, or it's not quite a class clown energy, but it could be. But it's more so, it's like, I feel like they're just drawn to you naturally. There's just some energies here that are naturally just sort of drawn to you with this, now that I say that, that's so interesting. Okay, because you have here the change card, right? With this little crow here, that's you. That's you. And it's kind of like they're on the outside. They're not quite in your immediate sort of like center is kind of how it's feeling, right? Like it's like if you're in the middle, they're like a couple of degrees outside of your connections, perhaps, right? But I feel like, I'm not sure if this is exactly related to you or meeting you, but it feels like they're going through like a really big sort of transformation and change, especially with this sort of butterfly energy and the snake as well, because this sort of circular energy tells me that they're going through like some sort of significant shift in like a cycle, perhaps completing a cycle and starting fresh, something like that. And I'm not sure if it's triggered by meeting you or coming into your energy. It could be, but it could be that they were sort of already going through this when they met you, right? It's like this change could have been precipitated before they came, like it was like a precursor, right? They had to go through this before they came into contact with you. So there is sort of like again with the synchronicities, right? With the dragonfly, because for you, Capricorn, it doesn't feel like there was much that you needed to do in order to bring this connection closer. It kind of feels like they were having to go through a lot of sort of change or letting go or shifting of their energy in order to bring them into contact with you, if that makes sense. Okay, but they do have here the expansion card, North. So this butterfly has been talking about expansion to me as well, right? Like a sudden sort of shift in awareness is kind of how it's coming through, right? Like they've spent all this time up until now as being sort of a caterpillar, but are suddenly expanding into a butterfly. They have more freedom, but they also have to learn how to manage this energy is kind of how this is feeling. You could be meeting them at work, or you could know them through your work especially, right? But they may be sort of going through a difficult time. Capricorn is kind of how it's feeling, because you have here this darkness moon and then the lake depth. And usually I see this as like sort of being submerged under, but because of the water card that was coming out here, the water card is sort of draining the water. I was actually seeing this as also being sort of like draining the water. It could be that you, Capricorn, because you're sort of playing the role of like lifting everybody up, right? It's kind of like lifting the mood, lifting sort of any sort of heavy emotions or stress or conflict. And it's helping this one to sort of pull out of this darkness energy, because you have here, that's interesting. You have here the Ten of Swords and the Five of Pentacles, right? So dark night of the soul, feeling left out of the cold. They may actually, because I kept saying that they're an outsider, they may feel like they're on the outside, because what they came out with was this energy. This was in their section, but now I'm kind of wondering if it's actually your energy. This is how they're seeing you, right? With the Ace of Swords, the Eight of Pentacles, and the Four of Wands, right? And then this was in between. So it kind of feels like, Capricorn, somebody in your environment, like perhaps in your workplace again, or somebody that's sort of on the outside, whatever that means, an outsider of some sort. Perhaps they just don't have a lot of friends or something like that. They somehow feel out of place in your direct sort of friend group or whatever it is. But they're seeing you as this, having some sort of truth, right? With the crow, like you have some sort of knowing or understanding or intuition or just like strong connection to source, or you know who you are, is kind of how this is feeling. With the Eight of Materials as well, again, it feels like kind of like work. It's like you could be just really good at your work is kind of how this is feeling. Like you're really good at your work. You are this like bright sunshine energy in sort of a difficult environment for them, especially because they may in particular be going through a difficult time is kind of how it's feeling. But it's like you're helping them to be pulled up out of this watery energy. And with the Four of Wands, that's talking about like celebration and coming together. I'm not sure if this is coming through as sort of like a romantic relationship. It may, especially because you have the King of Wands, which I'm feeling like is their energy, oddly enough, especially because it's coming through with like, once all this water drains, right? It's like, obviously this is not an ideal energy for them, right? They're going through some sort of transformation or change. They may be just going through I tried to say difficult and tough at the same time, a tough time. A difficult sort of transition period is kind of how it's feeling. However, obviously that's not their sort of natural state. And it's like, what's going to be revealed is the King of Wands, right? They may be sort of like a match to you, especially because there was all of that mirroring energy. But it's kind of like they perhaps are looking to you, right? Because you're this sort of ray of sunshine. And it's helping them to sort of remember that aspect of them as well. Is kind of how it's feeling, Capricorn. It's really quite lovely. I feel like the reason why this is coming out, it's like you may not be aware of that, is how it's feeling. You may not be aware of them, especially if they're like on the outside. Like it's not somebody that you necessarily interact with, but they can, I don't want to say it in like a creepy way. It's not coming through as being creepy, but it's more so like they are feeling like sort of gravitating towards you because you are this sort of bright, sunshiny, successful, right? All of this like accomplishment is kind of how it's feeling. Okay, Capricorn, I'm going to leave it there for the message. I am going to move to the extended. The link for that is in the description box below. I do have other videos if you're interested in checking those out. Thank you so much for sharing your energy with me, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.